Hi, my name is Radu-Alexandru, and in addition to completing my architectural studies, I'm holding a position as tutor at the Chair for Architecture Theory and Philosophy of Technics at Vienna University of Technology. You are asking me what my expectations have been and to whom I would recommend such path. Well, quite frankly, there were several things that fascinated me and things I've hoped for to learn. Thus, there were expectations, the ability to address architecture in an appropriate and cultivated manner, for instance, if one intends to devote efforts to the complexities of reality, which the architectural field always considers. Reflecting on architecture inevitably means to relate to the cosmos. I sought to maintain a voice in resonance with all there is and to learn how to engage with complex structures of thought. Personally, I would recommend this path to anyone who's interested in sonic, literary, and mathematical ways of communication, that is, who is interested in the various forms of language. To those who want to sharpen their intuition and natural gift of invention, and who feel inclined to question rigid and opaque structures of thinking. How can we develop an elastic practice of thinking and speaking without taking rigid positions and find the ability and competence to exist in tune with the rapid changes and tremendous uncertainties in our field? How then can we find a stance on such trembling ground? You are asking me to briefly present my work in the courses. Henceforth, a selection of proposals which shall serve as possible record of the potentialities which arose throughout my journey here at ATTP. These figures are crystalline. In this layer, successive concentrations of actuality encounter the virtual, where linear time becomes circular. They are attempts to build bidirectional passageways between magic and architecture through the language of mathematics. They are places abducted from time as a means of how to reason creatively. In these places, I can be light, sound, I can be substance. Poetry and prose as rhetoric instrument and its relation to digital architectonics through the language of code indeed captured my interest. How can a mathematical language such as code be poetical? What is digital architectonics? What is quantum literacy? What is the relation between architecture and rhetoric? What does it mean to become what one already is? Essential to the course substitute as part of the meta-architecture module were the ancient Greek progymnasmata, a set of preliminary exercises accelerating in difficulty, such as writing fables, narrations, or descriptions up to laying out an argument, in preparation for bringing about artistic forms of public speech. These gymnastics were built around the seemingly automated verse, a box, from Tender Buttons by Gertrude Stein. A piece comparable to a cubist painting, deserted of logic, narration, or ordinary grammar. We were invited to produce mechanographies of sorts, not in a sense of identical copies, but as a means to quantify the dynamics of a given text. Forces which later would stimulate a process of metamorphosis by way of substitution, change of syntax, change of topic and style, estrangement, etc. As the course advanced and with each novel iteration, the dialogue between the chosen ideational object and myself intensified. A dialogue which then translated into autofictional prose and versification, drawing from memories, the ancient myth of all-gifted Pandora and that of the goddess Hecate, furthermore from English writer, essayist and literary critic Thomas de Quincey, Levana and Our Ladies of Sorrow in his writing Suspiria de Profundis. It became a declamation of individual experience, a mechanical yet poetic gesture of self-reflection in the form of a prose poem titled Matryoshka. And here's a little excerpt of what I was writing. Wandering about in a city of waste and frailty, he found himself again facing exactly the same intersection, all of its arms hazy, orange the night. Mysterious voices. We know you. The choices you have made repeatedly will make unwillingly. Corners were whispering, a variety of windows and doors, mirrors. Light felt unbearable in the company of the triple-headed goddess and their vengeful mistresses. Distorted reflections, perhaps? They have to be. Suppose this is it, you see. Alabaster is translucent and fragile, and captivity makes it dull, blinded, deprived of speech, sessile. like a prisoner buried alive within sable circular walls. Him. 3 are stacked inside of each other. The night is dark, and dark as night. All walnuts are blackening when ripe, and yearning raven rivers for days gone by. Have mercy, O Hecate. When suddenly the sigil broke, shattered by the headlights of passing cars, the intersection has vanished in the distance. Rotten leaves turned to fruitful dust, and nurtured by endless cycles of torment, he began to thrive. As time moved on, one could observe him rising once again, levitating without burden. Their narrow scars have filled and their wounds have dried. Him again, weightless, steady change. It is wildly formed, of irregular proportions. It is bold, it is odd. It is all there is, all the deserts, from the sun to Mars and beyond, from beginning to end. Always changing, never changing, always desert, always mirror. This is the space of an interplanetary journey. The former, I would say, unleashed creative forces which articulated in a collaboration for Studio Sol, titled A Grotesque Interventure, an interior architecture studio led by Georg Fassel and accompanied by Indra Umbrasaite, which investigated on, and I quote, the contingencies of life, present, mobile, yet immobile in character, and which challenged us to think in terms of solar vernaculars. Our objects grew from a fruitful ground similar to plants, a growth which was stimulated by the information extracted from a set of archaeological artifacts. We were at the same time wondering about the conditions found in the terrestrial and extraterrestrial deserts of our solar system and their characters on different scales. Commonalities could be found on the level of matter, as well as techne, the art of making and its inherent notion of invention. The juxtaposition of our findings with the fiction of Jules Verne's A Journey to the Interior of the Earth gave rise to a narrative of an interventure from the Sun to Mars. An interventure which crystallized in 5 architectonic objects, accommodated by the grotesque as a tropical figure, and I quote, of unruly exchange. A tropicality in the sense of an intermediate condition characterized by a certain mechanics of transition, a non-place which, according to anthropologist Marc Auger, is a place both near and elsewhere, a place of rites of passage between 2 initial poles, a dichotomy, so to speak, of stasis and fluctuation, the mobile and the immobile. The sun recounts the story of silence and light, evoking memories and encourages introspection. Mercury engenders illusion of exposure, surveillance, and transformation. It distorts our previous understanding of reflection. Venus embodies ideas of sensuality with a focus on the phenomenology of intimacy. Earth encompasses the event of production and reproduction, entailing the notion of a constantly working machine. It is founded on tradition, invention, and innovation, while forming a breaking point. Ultimately, Mars, our final object. It is characterized by a rich formal vocabulary. It concludes our narrative as opposed to the first object in creating a feeling of extrovertedness and invites to assemble and communicate. Our attempt was to convey the notions of spatial and sensory diversity by remodeling the archaeological artifacts able to make a stance as an individual and within a collective. With Mnemomanteia, I have tried to develop what I would call a mnemotectonic dispositif. Mnemotechnics originates in the Roman legend of Simonides of Ceos, as told by Cicero, in the discourse of the concept of memory as one of the 5 parts of rhetoric. It is handed down that the poet Simonides has been the inventor of the mnemonic of loci, places, and imagines, images, which later on was employed by Roman rhetors as a method for the improvement of memory on the one hand, and on the other to memorize certain arguments or speeches. Mnemomanteia is a playful approach with which to address the question of what it means to combine method and architectural treatise in the field of digital architectonics. It was the most challenging of all exercises. This is expressed by a mnemotectonic card game. 3 players are invited to explore the possible relations between digitalization and philology on different scales through natural communication. Implicit in this method is the circulation around an imaginary obstacle, which is termed metaphora. Moreover, the game fosters a platform for exchange and serves didactic purposes. A marvelous story of three primordial mancers navigating about autonomously in a young and barren universe creates the backdrop of the game. The metopomancer, whose power is to silently project through lineaments, computes a virtual cosmological model. The blind necromancer, who is gifted with the ability to mediate and synchronize, has dominion over Epiphaneia, a spectral screen which architectonically reveals a multi-dimensional map of the cosmos. Ultimately, the deafened Kleronomancer, whose rule over language gives rise to pulsating signals to serve as a universal reference point. In a simultaneous descent and ascension inside and outside of their mental palaces, they will be able to synchronically operate in stable formation by generating a real-time map of their surrounding. In this way, they are capable of stabilizing themselves collectively. And here a little excerpt from my work. To count, truth, everything. About arithmo in detail. To reveal everything numbers could possibly know, everything for the pleasure of encryption. This is correct, perhaps figures in disguise. Equally true, be a symbol, reduction. 1, 2, 3, 4, a square, 10. Pay attention, two pure ideas form a precise line of thought, as if naturally drawn to one another. Orthographize, envision the elevation of the cosmos in mind. Shade it, as if you were to show it to a master in the future. A list, ordered line touching. 1, mirror of wonder. 2, public opinions. 3, a medium. 4, on a platform. 5, 6, mediality. 7, colorful opportunity. 8, circle, square, and a byte. 9, lives of an Egyptian cryptocat contained in a multitude of lines. Ethnographize. Project a cosmological map on the complex plane. Employ compass and rule. Be aware. To express. Mirror of wonder, the one which is nothing but source of all. The one form engendered by all forms. 2 opinions on a square. Public, platform when accomplished. That is, to adjoin time to itself. Make it categorical. A miraculous voyage into the future past, 4 lines of thought touching one another in an upright position. The mediator is paramount, orthogonality. A character. What species of monsters did you see? I have captured a sentiment felt with expression. Scenographize. Project into perspective all the lines converging in their accurate vanishing point. You are finally asking me what I was able to gain from these courses. What Professor Vera Bühlmann offers is a generous place of self-reflection for intellectual development and sophisticated creative reasoning. And what I am doing now is preparing my graduation thesis. And the focus will be the Renaissance studiolo of Francesco I from Vasari. And at the moment, I'm still in the process of figuring out. Thank you and happy Lustrum.